Welcome everyone to the Badge and Beyond. It's good to be back. G'day, mate.
It's very nice to have you back. International man of mystery, Danny McCarty, back in action in the podcast.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
We can't tell you what he's doing overseas. It's G14 Black Ops classified. So just lucky to have him back in one piece.
Well, it's good to be home. We thought today would be a good idea to talk about what happens when we've drawn our firearm on said target. So, you're not going to find too many officers that have been around that haven't drawn their gun a lot of times.
Well, there's probably certain commands where it's never happened.
Yeah.
The average command, it happens
Southwest
a
Sydney,
bit.
it's going to happen. So, mate, well, obviously there was heaps, but what's one of those times where you remember, thinking, I might have to shoot somebody?
I guess you make a good point. I think people don't, first of all, people don't understand how often you can draw a gun doing building search. Sometimes, like you're an alpha unit, like working by yourself, and something's happening, you're like, it's kind of better to have it out than not. But, even just, there's all these rules around it, and I've pointed my gun at a moving vehicle, even though they're like, oh, you really shouldn't but I'm like, in that situation, I don't know. Anyway, I do digress. Look, I think probably one of my first ones where it was like me and them was I was working an afternoon shift, so like a 4 o'clock shift, and it was myself and someone that was out of my class at the academy, and we'd only just kind of got our stride. But I don't think she didn't pass the last trimester or something, so she was still a pro. And we went to pick up a car. There was basically the car had been serviced. We had to pick it up to start the shift, and we do that. And while I'm just got everything in, and she's signing the forms to get a job for a violent domestic taking place, and it's in kind of our end of the command, within kind of 5 minutes away. So I'm, yell out to her and kind of do the whoop whoop on the on the horn and the sirens, because she's sitting there like, what? I'm like, come on, we gotta go. And so get in the car and start sucking off door handles as we go past cars on the way to this job, because it was the lady was on the phone screaming at the operator, top of her lungs, and she's locked herself in the bedroom, and her husband is trying to attack her, come through the door, right? He's trying different things. So I remember when we get there, we pulled up just behind another car crew and the supervisor, and the supervisor kind of indicates to me, go down the side and coming around the back. So I go down, and I'm, gun out, and I'm clearing the windows as we go, and we come to the garage, and we do a quick look in the garage, because we know there's as that thing is kind of what's going, if you're that guy and he's going to get stuff to get her, you don't know where he is and what he's doing, right? You don't want to go into the house and have him come in behind you with an axe or whatever else. So quickly clear the garage that's kind of off from the house, because the door was up a bit, then move in. As I come in through the house, it's 5 o'clock now, say. It's getting dark. It's dark inside the house, and we're moving through this house, and you're very familiar with your own house, but when you're in someone else's house, you've never been there before, and you have no idea what's inside, and you don't know where they are. And I can just remember hearing her screaming, there's different screams. There's the scream of fright, there's a scream of grief, then there's that I'm about to die or I'm dying scream. Yeah. And I remember hearing that, and I can hear this thumping, and I'm like, shit. And I'm moving through, because still, you just don't know, you don't know if there's kids in the house. There's just a myriad of information you don't have. And your mind's the more you get into the cops, the more you you become experienced in these circumstances, and your mind starts throwing out, okay, beware, might be kids, might be a dog. Okay, does that room need to be cleared? Can I clear that? Who's going to clear that? Who's funneling in, who's funneling out? Are you getting into what's called a fatal funnel? Things like that. I remember kind of moving through at a medium pace, but we're not running, right? Guns drawn, and I come up to the hallway, and I see the hallway lead funnels to the door, the bedroom's at the front door, right near the front door, and he's a decent sized dude, but he's got an axe and he's just swinging at that door, and it's just like going to pieces. And I can see this V opening up in the door, and I can see the wife on the other side, kind of, that's, screaming in, like you said, sheer terror. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this guy is almost like trance-like. It was just like fixated on her, because my supervisor and the other car crew were banging at the door next to him, trying to get the door open. And he's just like, almost like they don't exist. It's like he doesn't acknowledge that they're there. And at this point in time, like, I don't want to get too close because then I'm in range of the weapon. Yep. She's behind him. Like, where do I, but also, where's my trigger point? As in, how far do I let him get through the door before it's go time?
Before you take action. Yep.
Yeah. And all these things are kind of like running through your head, and you're like, shh, like, and I remember thinking, this is it, right? I'm going to have to put a couple of rounds into him, and it's very unlikely he's going to survive that. And, just progressing up, and I feels like it takes minutes. It only takes barely seconds. And then just out of nowhere, he just stops. Like, just literally, like, pulls the axe out of the door, puts it down, leans it up against the wall, goes and opens the door, and gets, like, slammed by the cops.
But has
obviously.
he seen you?
No. He had no idea I was there.
Because are you screaming at him or anything?
Not at that stage, because I'm like, like, there's all that point of, like, the cops are screaming, he knows they're there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so one thing I learned very early on, actually before I even joined the cops, when I was doing security, there was these training videos on, like, stabbing scenarios with police. And it's like, how much distance you have to have. And it's about, for you to get a firearm out and step sideways, 1 or 2 meters. If someone's charging at you, you need 10 meters worth of distance.
Yeah.
Well,
you're not
well within the 10 meters.
Yeah.
And I'm in a hallway, so there's nowhere for me to go, left or right.
Yeah.
But I've got to kind of be closer to him, so I've got accuracy with the firearm, but also I don't want to be too close. And it's all this kind of like, and like I said, it's still playing in my head of like, when, like, what's the point? Like, when does it go? And by this stage, it's kind of, because the cops weren't having any luck at the front door getting through, I'm like, it's him and me, because my partner can't get from behind me. And she was, no disrespect to her, she's a great cop, but small. Like, I'm 6'3", and this guy was about my size, but he was fit. And she was, very small. And like, it's just the two of us going here. And so thankfully it never came to that point, but I remember at that point going, yep, this is it. But it was just so beyond me that he would just, it was like, change the switch, put the axe down, open the door. Like I said, got slammed, but opened the door like he was greeting the Jehovah's Witnesses or a salesman. Like, hello. It was really weird.
Yeah.
And then of course I took them, like, he got arrested, we went back, and I took her statement, and she was great to begin with, but then when she realised he was being charged, she was up in arms, absolutely hated me, because she's like, I just wanted him to get help. I'm like, this guy was going to kill you. Like, I saw, you just knew that was not going to end well. Like, people will say, there are some people in the community that say, how do you know that? When you're a cop, like, there's a difference between an upset man and an angry man.
Yeah.
There are certain people that would just, they flip out, they flip that switch, and anything in front of them will die that time. Yeah. And the consequences don't matter to them. Yeah. He was one of those guys.
Yeah.
And that was never going to end well. But the thing that it was one of those times and we understand it more now, but at that time I was like, we just attended to save your life. We've taken you out of a very bad situation. And now she ended up yelling and screaming at me because he was being charged, and he was going to go to the hospital for a mental health assessment after the charging process, but that was what had to happen. And I was like, are you effing kidding me? Like, I was like, anyway,
yeah, it's the dynamics of DV,
unfortunately.
And you don't, and it's very easy for people who work in the space or read the literature and study up in the sector, but when you have dedicated yourself to putting your life at risk to save someone from the offender, and then they turn on you too, the victim, you still, no matter how much you understand it, at the time it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So yeah,
and it takes on a very real dynamic, and I think there's an old boss of mine used to say, because he used to have these conversations with management, and he'd been a cop and he worked in security, and we were working in a health setting, and he said it was really hard. He always used to express his frustrations dealing with management. He said, because they do not understand an angry man. Yeah. And it's true. Until you're in a circumstance where there are no rules, right? Like the other person doesn't accept that there are rules. You're trying to work through rules, but violence is where it's at, and you just know it's on, and the consequences be damned for that guy. It's a whole different world. But people sit on the outside and they comment and they talk about what they would have done and how they would have handled it, what we need to be aware of. And I'm like, it's that saying, get in the arena, mofo. Like, you want to talk smack, cops are recruiting, go for it.
Yeah.
So what about yourself?
Look, a lot of occasions. Those are first probably 8 to 10 years at Bankstown gave me plenty of reason to draw. But thankfully, in all those circumstances, the person puts the weapon down when they've got a gun pointed at them. One that sticks out for me is we were doing beats, right? So we were, when you're not in the car, you're walking through the area.
Everybody loves beats.
Yeah. Look, to be honest, because I first started just before the Olympics came to Sydney, there was a lot of beat patrol happening because for some reason the American Olympic team was staying in Bankstown.
Obviously they didn't do a recce.
I don't know who.
No.
Whatever. And so they were actually also, I remember like the volleyball team and men's and women's US team were actually practicing at the Bankstown Town Hall. So you'd get to go and watch it. Like, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I remember we escorted Marion Jones, who was a very well-known female sprinter, fastest woman in the world, I think, at the time. And I was obviously in my pro, so very, very, very new. And I had my senior officer. We were escorting her down from the hotel to go to one of the buses or whatever. And she said, "Oh, so this is like the Beverly Hills of Sydney." And yeah, same result from us, right? And my partner said, "No, this is more like Compton." And she's like, "You're joking, right?" No. But this was back then. Bankstown's a wonderful city now. Back in those days, we were the crime capital. So for a number of violent crimes. Anyway, so as a result, there was a lot of rostered beat patrol. Okay. And I remember, there's only so much you can walk in 8 hours or 10 hours. So I was with a really good cop who's still in the job now. And we're like, why don't we ride the trains too? So we can just go to different areas of the patrol, just take the train because we don't have a car, right? Well, so we're walking towards Bankstown Railway, and a job comes over that 2 people have been held up by someone with a syringe. Now, in those days as well, early 2000s, it became a bit of a craze for some stupid reason, where the MO or the tactic used was to take a blood-filled syringe, and claim it had AIDS or hepatitis or some communicable disease, and that they'd stab you with it if you didn't give them the phone or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So we got 2 calls in pretty quick succession for 2 separate victims, and the next stop for this train would have been Bankstown. So me and my partner have sprinted off to the railway and gone off to the concourse, worked out which train it is, gone on opposite sides of the carriages, and the train was obviously given instructions not to leave. So if you, as you know, like in the trains, you've got like the upstairs and the downstairs. So we don't know where he is, and you want that element of surprise. You don't want to go through the entryway where he sees you, you're ideally looking to come from behind. So we took our chances and just split up. Anyway, me being me, of course, I'm the one that ends up facing him as I walk through. And I recognise him. He's pretty prolific in the area for doing all kinds of offences, including robberies. And he always has had like knives and stuff on him before. Anyway, because of the way he's seat, if you think yourself of the train carriage, the seat before in front of him sort of covers him. So I can only see from like the neck up kind of until I get closer to look over because he's got the chair back up, so it's facing that way. So it's kind of like a little barrier between me and him. But he hasn't noticed my offsider, who's now almost behind him, which is really good. So then I was a bit more confident that he can take him out if need be. Anyway, so I'm like...
You mean arrest?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I see him, as soon as he sees me, he puts his hand under his jumper.
Oh.
So I've drawn my firearm, and I'm like, show me your hands, take your hands out, blah, blah, blah. He's just looking at me and keeps fiddling under his jumper. And again, I got limited view with what I can see. So I'm like, this idiot's going to make me shoot him. Like, this is what's going on.
Yeah. I
don't know what he's got. And he's willing to move things around while I've got a gun pointed at him. And again, I'm really junior at this point in time. But I wanted to look, so I'm walking forward to look over to see what he's got, which again, couldn't have been, maybe that wasn't a great idea. Like again, junior, if it was a firearm, wouldn't have ended well for me. But I'm like, we kept hearing syringe. In my head, it's a syringe or a knife. And so I should be relatively okay. But it took me screaming at him 4 or 5 times. And what he ended up doing was he was throwing everything he'd gotten down. Yeah, he'd hidden under his, so he's just getting rid of all the evidence of whatever he stole, the cash, wallets, watches, and and the idiot, like, where's it gonna go? There's no one else in this carriage.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I'm gonna find your evidence. Anyway, but my partner got to him nice and quick, and it was sorted. He ended up having a syringe, but that was in a bag on the side. But I remember that was the first time thinking, shit, I might have to shoot someone. Right, and it was a really weird kind of feeling because I think I would have been maybe 8 weeks in, 10 weeks in at that stage. It's a hell of a experience, when you're fresh. And after that, geez, I could, probably 100 times. I don't know how many times in 17 years I pulled it. You draw your gun. But I remember my last occasion. So I was telling you guys off air. My last occasion, and again, people like, it's a gun pointed at you. I'm baffled by some humans and the way they respond. 2 o'clock in the morning, get a call. Someone is breaking into this yard. It was like a smash repairers kind of thing, but like homemade. So he's got about 100 cars in his front yard kind of thing where he works on them. And there was like chains, and he was breaking through chains. I was like 1 street behind at the time.
Yeah.
Of course. So I get there first. I'm a single unit vehicle. I'm the supervisor. I'm the sergeant on shift. And I just see this hooded character, decent sized bloke, with the bolt cutters, trying to break into into this thing, on this chain. And I'm like, stop, police. And he turns around and because of the lighting, I couldn't tell what was in it. Was it just bolt cutters? Was there something? Couldn't tell. Just some large metallic thing, something. And he's walking towards me with whatever he's carrying. And so I draw my gun. And I go, mate, put it down. He's like, are you drawing your gun at me? I'm like, yeah, this is a conversation we're going to have.
Yeah.
Put it down. And he just continues to, I can't believe you're drawing your gun at me. I go, put it down. And I'm just thinking to myself, he's just getting closer. This guy's an idiot. Like, how do you think this plays out? But eventually, like, backup arrives, and now he's got 3 guns drawn on him.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was he was just so upset that someone drew a gun at him. So it ends up being it's his dad's yard. The key didn't work. They needed something from one of the vehicles for a customer. So he went and got bolt cutters and was trying to. Now all he had to do was put it down, show me ID, and I would have worked out that he lives there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, let's walk towards the police with something in your hand at 2 o'clock in the morning, all like hooded up. Yeah, and let's see how that works.
This, you touched on a point there that this is the issue I see. People would demonise police for doing reasonable actions, taking reasonable actions. So, see, if you look at that through a lens of, from his perspective, he knows what he's doing. He's got the right to do that, fair enough. But you have no idea. Now, you and I have both seen crooks that show this, indignation at anything that you're interacting with them, coming towards you when they shouldn't, when you're giving them directions not to. But they use that to close distance so then they can assault you and take whatever and then get away. We also see complete innocents being dorks, for want of a better word. I've got a few for them. But, because they want to act like, say, the proverbial Karen and what gives you the right to do this and that? I was like, honestly, I just care about saving my life and the people around me right now because you pose a threat. And that's the issue. I say to people, I don't know how many times I've had these conversations where they're like, people being shot here and in America by police and whatever. Like, when a police officer speaks to you and asks you to do something, that's the time for compliance. And then cops aren't judge, jury, and executioner unless you make them be judge, jury, and executioner. Your job is, you comply with everything, then go to court and argue, get your best lawyers, do whatever else. You've done nothing wrong. You go to court, you'll be right.
What's funny is no lawyer will tell you be a dickhead.
Yeah, exactly.
No lawyer will say, hey, when the cops ask you for this, don't put it down, give them lip.
Yeah.
They won't. The best chance you've got for your case, if they are in the wrong, carry out, comply, and then deal with it later.
And really good crooks are very good at that. I've had a couple of instances where I was, in dangerous situations, but with really good crooks that are from organised crime families. And they were very nice. Very compliant, very, they were playing games, but they were playing a very smart game. And that's the difference. It's the Karens and the hoods that want to be, you can't do this, whatever. Mate, that's how people get hurt. They're playing a dangerous game and they don't seem to realise it, but it's the cops that, it still baffles me that the cops are getting the blame when yet no one says, well, it's pretty clear that you were given a direction, you didn't follow it.
Because criminals, realistically, if they know, even if you've committed some decent offences, you don't want attention drawn to yourself.
No.
It's common sense. Your best chance is to just shut your mouth. And then you've got people that have done nothing wrong. Okay, and they could be at the wrong place, the wrong time, or they don't know, and they're not aware of how dangerous the situation is that they're in. Just shut up and listen. That's the problem. But people want to have an opinion, and now, we're in an age where start recording. It's a good thing I'm not a cop anymore because I'll be kicking the shit out of those phones, because no one wants anything like that in your face, right?
No.
And I understand there's things for probative value. There's things that are if you see going back to the Rodney King stuff, I understand that. But this stupidity of someone knocks on the door to serve an AVO or to give you a form of demand, and you know it's coming, you know what it's for, and then on the thing they record, why are you here? Do you have a warrant? Oh, shut your mouth. You've watched too many movies, right? And it's always, these are the guys that try to get airplay on TikTok and other videos because they've set it up, right, so that it looks like this amazing conspiracy against them. How many law-abiding citizens have the cops knock on their door every day?
None.
So also, calm down with your sympathy train.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And the sympathy train actually makes life more dangerous for crooks and cops. Because that sympathy train means that cops were like, okay, they had this indignant person that's coming towards, like you said, did you really just draw a gun at me? How dare you? What are your rights? All the rest of this stuff. But then they start second guessing, and they do put the gun away, and then they get shot. Or then once you've heard about one of your colleagues being shot, you're more on edge. So when someone breaches that your reactionary gap and comes close, and they're being a dick, but you've heard about it, and and you're like, and you're amped up, you're more likely to make a mistake and shoot an innocent person. immediate compliance is the only option right there at that time, then go to court later.
Yeah, and the problem is unfortunately, there are obviously some members of the force that aren't the greatest in self-restraint.
Yep.
And then they're so hyped up and angry and screaming and whatever, they look like they're out of control. And that's the worst thing you can come across. One of the very few things I remember from the academy that made sense was one of the inspectors there was speaking about how you control your voice. And it's like, you come into it screaming at the top of your lungs, you got nowhere to go.
Yep.
Right? You can't, if you're already at the top, you can't go high, you can't escalate.
Yeah.
But a controlled, steady voice, right? In many ways is a lot more intimidating.
Yeah, because you're not flat.
Yeah.
You're unflappable in that situation.
Yeah.
And it's good for the troops when you're a leader as well.
And that's the thing. And I got many times, and I was like, I took that and I saw how that plays out. The guy's screaming himself. I'm like, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And it's just straight, controlled, and then giving clear, precise. And I'm like, and then the thing is, you don't back down from that.
No.
And if it needs to escalate, I've got plenty of room to escalate up.
That's right. Sometimes the scariest man in the room is the person that doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
I used to have a technique that I found it was very off-putting for people, because I get the guy that scream and yell and whatever else, and I just walk up to him and whisper in his ear. Yeah. And freak him out. Well, because he's like,
that could go places.
But they're putting on this big show, and you're obviously not fazed.
Yeah.
And you go and whisper something in their ear, and it's more dangerous. It just sense you're in their space, you have presence in them, you're calm and you're in control. Yeah. And then the words you use, that puts people on a whole different, particularly guys that are often doing the big show and carrying on, they're weak as piss. Yeah. And they go to water when you do that.
Yeah, and especially if there's a crowd.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, see, all of, I used to say it all the time to the high school kids. See, all of you could have left by now. You could be doing something a lot better than hanging out with cops at the railway. But Hero over here wants to shoot off his mouth. So now we need to know what's going on. Everyone needs to show IDs. We got to call parents. And then they shift their attention to, you're an idiot. And they start telling him off.
Yeah, that's right.
Then I'm like, all right, win.
Yeah. I used to do that with people too. I used to do it with crooks when they were being mouthy. I'm like, you know what? I've got nothing better to do. I'm paid to come and talk to you guys.
I'm literally being paid to do this.
I said, but every time I see you with someone, I'm going to stop and search them.
Yeah.
Obviously within the legislative bounds. But I'm going to stop and speak to them and search them and do whatever. And then when they ask why, I'm going to say, because you're mates with this guy. Yeah. I said, do you want that? Do you want every crook around here knowing that you're bringing heat on them? And it works. You know, they start to speak to you different. Yeah, it's amazing the difference in the way people talk to you between being a detective and being in uniform. Yeah. And you can have just put on a suit for the day. Yeah. And they will still talk to you different because they think you're a detective. Yeah. Crooks work on a different level. Like they have an understanding. And you know when you're talking to them who you're dealing with, and just by the way they react.
Yeah, and they look at your shoulder, they see what rank you've got. Like they have an understanding. Yeah. Right. They know the go. Those that are a bit more seasoned in that space, they understand what experience means and what a supervisor means.
I think, you know what, you remind me of something before when you're talking about that last job. I had another job at Campsie. It was a home invasion. And I'd actually been to the house before for a house fire where the lady thought she'd set a kitchen on fire, but it was really just a self-cleaning mechanism in the oven. But I used to have a regular haunt down the bottom of their street because there was always people dealing drugs and doing stuff. Yeah. And so I just happened to be down there when the call for the home invasion came on. So I didn't have to fly up the road or do it like creating noise. But when I got there, I'm alpha, right? So it's like 9, 10 o'clock at night. I'm on my own as 14. Yeah. I get out of the car and there's a cockatoo. There's a guy sitting there watching. He's kind of like, oh shit. Yeah. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for my friends. I'm like, you know, there's the point of like, I know there's something going on. Do I handcuff him? But I've only got one set of cuffs. I don't know how many's in the house. And I'm like, so I'll pass that on. I go in, gun out, move down. And because of being in the house, I got a little bit of an advantage, right? I remember what it looks like inside. And just as I'm coming to the back porch to come go around, kind of the porch is at the end of the house. I'd go down the side driveway. Like, these 3 people come out, arm like, gun drawn, that's it. And I'm yelling at him, get on the ground, do whatever. One guy doesn't comply, he walks away. Mm-hmm. I'm like, now I'm split, right? He's walking away from me into a dark backyard. One female is there, one other guy with her, and then this guy. And he's really kind of like, he's not running, and he's walking away and he's not complying the directions. I'm like, what's going on? Again, the scenarios run through your head of, is he going to run? Is he walking, looking for his exit, giving himself time, and then he's going to sprint? Is he looking for something to come back at me with?
Yep.
Or is he just revving himself up, assessing the situation, so he's going to turn and run at me?
Yeah.
And I saw him launch something, and he came back, and there was still more shouting and stuff, and I got him sat down, just keeping them there, and then, would you believe the homeowner comes out, the victim, starts punching on with the female from the home invasion. So
That's what you
gun
want.
goes away, I'm like throwing them left and right. The 2 guys have got sitting down and getting up, and I'm like, so now I've gone from 3 people to 4, but I'm somehow trying to protect the victim and the offender from each other and stop myself, and I've got another guy at the front that I'm unaware of, and I'm like, this is going to hell in a handbasket.
Yep.
And by this time, because I had the situation already in control, I thought I've already called the other cars to just like basically go at normal speed. And then I've had to call back up and say, no, I've got a brawl. I need extra cars urgently.
Yep.
So the weird thing is, we had it all worked out. The home invasion is because the lady that turned up reckoned that the victim was sleeping with her husband. Right. And she's brought her brother and a cousin with her, and they've basically kicked in the back door and gone after this woman, even though she's married and her husband's there, mind you. And as that's, they've threatened her and done whatever, and I've caught them as they're leaving. What old mate did was he had this massive knife and he launched it into the lawn, and there it is, it's sticking like a lawn dart out.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was interesting. I'll tell the story and then I'll tell you what came up. So we got him all handcuffed, we got him sorted, and I found the knife, and there was also a baton on him and stuff. But because I hadn't had a chance to search him. And while he's being handcuffed and searched, we found all this stuff, and I patted him on the back and I said, mate, I just want to say thank you. And he's like, what for? I'm like, because while I was sorting out these 2 girls, you had the jump on me, you could have taken me out, but you didn't. I respect that. That was good.
Yep.
And I'll try to make your journey with the cops, i.e., like, make sure he doesn't get a rough ride back to the station or anything. Like, we'll make sure we look after you a little bit, because you could have killed me, but you didn't.
Yeah.
And then I got back to the station, and one of the SPOs, the student police officers there, he's like, why'd you thank that crook? I'm like, because mate, he had the opportunity to do me over.
Yeah.
I had no backup. He had weapons on him. He was only a meter or 2 away, and I had my back to him while I was trying to sort out the other 2, because that was dynamic and moving around. And if he had got up and had drawn something, then I would have had to, engage him, which could have been shooting him. That's the last thing I want to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And I want that guy to understand that, yeah, you got caught by the cops, but there's a bit of mutual respect there.
Yep.
And, it was a very bizarre incident. But I felt like I got one of the best compliments of my life, because that victim's like, who was that sergeant? He was a proper staunch see you next Tuesday. And I was like, yeah, I'll take that. That's like a trophy in the bogan world, right? So yeah.
A trophy in the bogan world.
And one of those things, I got nominated for a bravery award out of that. And but they're like, oh, you have to write a report to say what you did. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Well,
that's your job, right? We got paid. I didn't get stabbed.
Write a report
I didn't do
about
anything.
yourself.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not me. So
Meanwhile, someone's getting an award for updating the police note.
But it's so easy. Things go from one to the other. You know, like it just happens. Like another time, and that's the thing. There's hundreds of times. There was one time it just happened to be Johnny on the spot doing a U-turn on Canterbury Road and got flagged down by some sex workers.
Yeah.
And there's this guy who's just, like you said, not compliant. He's like been harassing them. I turn up. He backs into the fence line. He's got his hood pulled over his head and his hands in his pockets. I'm yelling at him to get his hands out because they're like, he carries a knife. He's always got a knife. We've seen a knife. And got the gun out. Nothing. He's just like not. And again, you're like, how'd I get myself in this situation? I was just doing a U-turn. Like I wasn't, you know, because you're just Johnny on the spot. And then, like you said, a Bankstown car came around the corner when I called for assistance. They see me with a gun out and they like come down doing Mac 20s. Yeah. And they got guns out. And then all of a sudden, old mate's like, okay, I'll comply.
Yeah. Like, because one gun's not enough.
Yeah. And, you know, I think he had like a penknife or something. Like it was a nothing kind of, it was like a Swiss Army knife.
Crocodile Dundee moment.
Oh, you're killing me.
Yeah,
but, I mean, don't get me wrong, they can be dangerous, but they're not.
Yeah, it just baffles you. I think looking back at every time there was a firearm in the scenario that I was in, the two times I can remember distinctly, I just remember thinking, get to the gun first. Because both times the gun wasn't in the person's possession, but it was close by.
Yeah.
Both times they were shotguns and they were going for it. I just remember running and diving and putting my whole body on top of it and just holding on to it. Because to me, that's the worst case scenario, that they get to the gun. Because problem is, just because you draw, it doesn't mean it's over.
No.
And you think normally, hey, I've got the jump on you, like the gun's already on you. Listen. Some people may not, and they're also hoping you don't want to shoot.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's a terrible situation to be in.
And it doesn't. The thing is, you're depending on context. And I'm simplifying this in a great deal. So don't take this as legal opinion or anything else, or even my expert opinion. But potentially in a circumstance where someone's going for a gun, you might have rights to shoot them.
Yeah.
Yet defending that legally, like if someone brings you up against a charge of homicide for that, it makes a big difference whether he's got a finger on it or not.
Yeah.
And was the gun loaded? Or what did you know about that person, that gun at the time? And, you know, it's all of those things. Yet also, people have this image that, if I shoot someone, you'd shoot them once, and they do this big floppy dance like they've seen in TV and they go down.
Yeah.
And yet all my experience and information from, you know, different parts of law enforcement, predominantly in shooting is, you know, sometimes it takes multiple shots, and there's like people can still be active. I think it's called the dead man's minute or something, where while people are bleeding and their organs are shutting down, they're still violently interacting with you.
Yeah, which is again why you need that distance when you're especially with like just a blade.
Yeah.
Let alone someone's got a gun. Well, you're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, that fatal second guessing decision-making process as a cop could be, you know, could end everything for you, because you're thinking consequences. Now I'm going to have to answer this at the coroner. I'm going to have to go to the like you should not.
I'm going to be on the news.
You should not be having to think that
in
a life or death situation, right? And we've watched too many movies. That's the problem. We always go to default US and think that's the situation in Australia.
Yeah.
Why didn't you shoot the gun out of his hand? Why did you go for you're shooting to kill? And
why don't you shoot people in the leg? I'm like,
why didn't you? My favorite is, why didn't you fire a warning shot? Yeah, like I'm in the 1800s.
Kill the granny upstairs.
Yeah, 1800. Environment. Like everyone thinks it's Yosemite Sam, but yeah. And then you're having to defend yourself against these kind of inane comments.
Yeah, people that don't have a clue telling you how to do your job, and you're like,
and this is what I find interesting, and again, this is the unique probably Western democracy side of the equation. Most places around the world, you'd never dare open your mouth about that, and you wouldn't say certain things either, because you're like, hey, no, well, he's a cop, why didn't you listen to him? And like, you're running from the cops. Who does that? Right, of course you don't. And they don't have overseas, they don't have this thing where you can't shoot a fleeing felon, or what you shoot, he doesn't listen to you, You got a weapon and you're running away, you're getting shot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's very interesting the different how law enforcement is viewed in many different countries. But here everybody has a field day. Everybody wants to have a crack.
And look, crime is on the way up again.
Yeah.
You know, the community, and whether it's a loud minority or a majority, and I think it's more of a loud minority, but the majority doesn't step up. And that is, they've been just constantly cutting down the cops time after time after time so that people believe it. Bad cops everybody's got a bad cop story, so that gives them a bad reputation.
Yep.
And then, you know, it's just like, it feels like the cops are always the ones in the wrong. And it really just depends if it's a slow news day or not. You know, like, oh, well, are we on the side of the police today? We did that yesterday, so let's run 5 different days of coverage against the cops, and then we might give them one positive story.
Yep.
Just.
Well, the biggest thing now is, you know, the commissioner putting a no confidence in a previous commissioner's nephew for showing a sex video to colleagues. Like, in what's happening today in the world.
Well, probably
like what the hell?
She was probably offended because he didn't buy a bottle of her gin to share around while they were watching this kind of stuff. I mean,
it's become a farce. There is a mass exodus continuing in the police. Skeleton crews everywhere. There's terrible wage negotiations taking place where people are just...
Whoa. A negotiation requires back and forth.
Hey, well, this is true. Yeah. Alleged negotiations. And you're losing some of your greatest in droves. And this is what our concern is. Like, it's getting ridiculous. And what's the final outcome here? An upshooting crime, youth crime out of control, and no respect for law enforcement, and you're like,
and this is the thing, right? Sooner or later, what you're going to end with is what they had in the States, where you had vigilante groups. Yeah. Right.
Well,
communities.
It happened. I don't know if you saw it in Guildford.
I heard something about this.
Watch the video. It's hilarious. You know, from what I've seen, again, I'm not completely au fait with it. I only know what I saw on video. What I saw on video was pretty impressive. This guy's just been going through like a breaking in a merchant, just stealing, and the neighbour's like, "Hey, come here," and quote unquote citizen's arrest. He may have copped a couple of hits.
Well, obviously he did not comply.
Yes, and then handed over to the police, willing and able to be taken into custody, and. But this is what's going to happen now. Like, someone's coming and breaking into your house and no one's turning up for friggin' 14 hours and some poor bastard's dying because he calls the cops and then, you know, he's in his 90s and no one turns up. Like, what the hell?
Yep.
But if there's no resources left, this is going to become a real problem.
And how do you recruit decent people if they are only getting bashed every day on the news?
By TikTok videos. Have you not seen the amazing videos where we can use like our new generation's vernacular to bring them over? Just say skibbity and you'll join the cops. Like, what the hell?
Alpha Sigma, baby.
Yeah. Like, that's where we are now.
Yeah.
Join the cops. It's a W.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing is, I don't know who I was having this conversation with the other day, but do you remember the He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother?
Best police recruitment video.
Not only was that a recruitment video, that constantly showed the community this is what cops are doing
because it was real
every day. Yeah, because it was real. And so people were reminded every time they turned on their TV that, like, you know what? They're the sheepdog. They're the necessary evil.
Mate, it showed,
they look like
showed
wolves,
the death messages. It showed
the car accidents, the DV, the muggings on the street. Like,
no one was dancing like a moron.
No. And it was good. When was the last time, outside of search warrants, right, which all look the same, like we have body cam footage on every cop out there. And they are going to some horrific stuff. Put that out. Here's a free tip. New South Wales Police Marketing Team, Public Affairs Branch. I'm not going to even invoice you for this.
I will.
Put out some of the body cam footage of the cops doing good work. You know, going into the building that's on fire and dragging people out, or just looking for people, doing building searches and getting someone in a lockup, right? dragging someone out of a car, doing CPR, doing whatever, because they do that daily. Going into a DV where you've got the victim screaming and yelling and face mangled because some asshole has gone to town on it, and putting him in cuffs and getting him out of there.
Yep.
Put that on TV, increase your recruitment, remind the community of what the police do. I mean, I'm not a marketing genius, but I'm pretty sure that'll work.
Maybe listen to your troops.
Oh, that would help. Hey, whoa. That would require new management. That would require a new course in leadership. Yeah. Actually, we could, New South Wales Police, we will do a leadership course for you. We'll even work on a mentor basis. And for the low price of, I don't know, what are we going to, I think it's definitely worth 7 figures, the state they're in, right? We'll do that for you.
Well,
sorry, soapbox moment.
Took an interesting turn.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's what happens when you're hearing the frustrations of police constantly.
Yep.
And you know, right now we've been kind of mini recruiting for Precision, and speaking to current and former detectives who are interested in joining us, and just hearing their stories, it's just the same shit.
Yeah.
And it's not improving. And
the problem is,
understand.
There are some good leaders in the cops.
Yeah.
But one good leader does not undo all the push down from other areas and the constant bad leadership that's shown.
Correct.
And that's the problem. You know, and I'll take a baseball bat to bad cops when they're not doing the job they should do. But there are plenty of good cops out there doing the hard yards, getting nothing, going nowhere fast, and just being beat down by a system and an organisation that doesn't respect them.
Yep. And you wonder why now you've got all these young, junior, new people that have come in who can't articulate their lepra, they can't articulate their powers of arrest, and they're getting a phone shoved in their face asking them, why are you doing this? And you know, then we're recording them as they swear back at you and all this kind of stuff, and you bait them and they take the bait.
Now more than ever, we need, when you consider the technology involved in policing, the public the public relation skills required, the communication skills, the physical prowess, and the ability to interpret law quickly and accurately. Yes. Now more than ever, we need a very skilled bunch of cops that are both physically and mentally fit and diverse, and they're lowering the standards to get people in.
Yeah, again, it's the same old adage. Do you know, like back when I did the sergeant's exam, one of the essay questions we had to do a Godfrey report on was, and which is funny because I don't know which sergeant would ever be asked by the commissioner to do this report, but that's the scenario. Good thinking, realistic guys. That's how you pick a good sergeant, by the way. What would you, so the question was in relation to how would you write a report to give the commissioner advice on police retention, right? They showed you some stats and figures.
Don't be a dick about it.
Yeah, I think you had to just show that you could structure an argument. But so this is back then now. Well, I'll do that exam to 2014, 2015, something like that. And what's funny is here we are now, right? So many years later, and not only is retention a problem, we paid them to leave and wondered why they left.
Now they're ringing them to come back.
Yes.
Oh, well,
so now that we've paid you, could you come back? Like, and now it's kind of like a lottery thing, and you're waiting for the minute till you access the system, and everyone just we want to. What is this? It's a farce.
Yeah.
It's an absolute farce for something that people you've got the lives of people in your hands every day. The community expects you to keep them safe and protected. And there's no respect from within the infrastructure itself, let alone the community sentiment. Yeah, it's mind-boggling that no one from state leadership, like from the Premier, has stepped in and gone, hey, what the hell is going on?
No, mate, the Commissioner has his full faith.
Like, what are you doing? What would we, for example, if we had this happen to us with the Ambos and there was a massive walkout, right? All the paramedics, senior paramedics decide to leave, the ambos decide to leave, and they're leaving in their thousands. Wouldn't that get the attention of like the Premier going, hey, maybe I need to do something about this. Something is wrong. Something's happening. And then you've got them also in this little proxy war with the AFP.
Yeah.
There's significant issues in law enforcement in this country. And I don't see anyone doing anything about it.
Yeah. I have my own beliefs on why they're not doing anything about it, but it'll probably get us cancelled.
That's okay. But can I ask you, can I tell you something about this cancel culture shit? Right? And Jenny's shitting herself. I don't care.
Danny's like, I don't want to do the podcast next week.
Like, really?
I'm not down.
You know what's funny? Like, okay, people will no longer watch your video, or they'll watch it more so they can tell you off.
Yeah, isn't that true?
Oh, but no. Like, for 17 years,
Yeah.
we had our life on the line for all kinds of shit. Met the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
Do you think your cancelling rhetoric is going to really worry me in my life?
Yes.
Like, it's funny, right? It's just this whole mentality of shit. In this day and age of where we live, there's horrific things happening around the world, right? And now the stuff that is allowed to come into schools and what our kids are being taught, confusing the crap out of them, it's a hell of a lot more important than me being cancelled.
Yeah.
Because, you stepped out of line with what you have to say. It was not the whole point of this democracy, allegedly. You say you could speak and
free
advocate.
speech is not free anymore.
Yeah, there's no free speech.
No.
But you can say a hell of a lot of bad shit as long as it
fits
on the right
agenda
side
of someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah. So go your hardest. So, bro, say what you want to say. I
Well,
don't give a crap about being cancelled.
Well, let's put it this way. I wonder if we had a female premier, if they would step up and sack a female commissioner.
Yeah.
I think
they're worried about the optics.
Yeah. I think, if I'm being honest, this current commissioner has set back women in policing years, if not decades. Because the current look is, we put a female in there and she didn't do a good job. When there was hundreds of female officers, I can literally name tens that are in commissioned officer ranks that I would say they would be much better than her. And that person would have done a better job, and then women in policing wouldn't be seen by the greater community at all as, we put them in leadership, they can't lead. Because there's always going to be a goose that says that.
Yeah.
And
well, that's the only positive that came out of the Bondi incident.
Yeah.
Was the amazing efforts of that
exactly.
female inspector.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the thing. Some of the best detectives I know are females.
Yeah. Same.
And they are absolutely gobsmacked that there is a woman in leadership that is running the organisation into the ground and is likely going to be the scapegoat as to why they end up being. There's potentially going to be a time frame where they're like, oh, remember the last time we put a leader in, like a female leader in? When it's got nothing to do with her gender and everything to do with her capabilities as a leader.
Yep.
And that's and just my opinion. But that's my feeling on the matter, and I'm not alone in that.
No, you're definitely not alone in that, and that's what I'm saying. I don't understand how this hasn't come to the attention of ministers, of premiers, of friggin' prime ministers. Like, the state police is a significant asset, right, to law and order in part of when it comes to the citizens, right? You got to take this seriously.
Yep.
It's the lead agency in almost every emergency scenario, and so you kind of need to make sure they're on their game.
Yep.
And how this exodus has not gotten their attention, and not with we're going to throw $10 million into this mental health program, and you're the friggin' reason for the mental health program. Fix yourselves up.
There definitely feels to me to be, there's just a disconnect between senior management, at least some of the senior management, and the troops. You can't, like Leadership 101, just get back and start doing some of the basics. Yep. How good would it be if you were working Bankstown 15 Maybe not in the current situation, but imagine being Bankstown 15, so a cage truck, and you hear, like, cop 1, I'll back them up.
Yeah.
So that's like the commissioner of police, call sign. Like, okay, you'd be on your game.
Yep.
But imagine being in a tussle and knowing the commissioner's rolling on the ground with you with that offender.
Yeah.
I know it sounds stupid, but I remember we had a superintendent that was working at the races, and he like finished his shift and he's walking out. There's a tussle at the lights. He's in.
Yeah.
Right? He was on it.
Yep.
And whether you loved that guy or hated him, people always remembered that about him.
Mate, at the time, he was the superintendent, the commander of Bankstown. He then went on to become a deputy commissioner. During a police pursuit, the route the offender was taking was going to make him drive past the police station of Bankstown. Commander goes out of his office, comes downstairs, takes out wheelie bins and blocks the road. Right?
Yeah.
And you're like, how many, like, and you get, now knowing what the system is like, that's a very unique event.
Yeah.
That's a very unique event to get out of the office, come down and do something. Let alone we've gone to jobs where I've had, you've heard Bankstown 1, Campsie 1, whatever, go and pull over a vehicle, right? And when you hear 1, that's the commander, that's the superintendent. But yeah, absolutely. Like there needs to be this like, look, let me compare it to ancient times. Where was the king in warfare? Where were the leaders of the Vikings? And mate, they were on the battlefront. They were there. They gave their empowering speech to their troops, right? And they were on the battlefield as the battle started. Many of the greatest generals held the sword and led the charge, right? And these people were serving their country or their people and with their lives. Leadership should be inspiring. Otherwise, you are not a leader. I don't care what your rank is.
Yeah, you're a manager.
You're a manager, if that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what the hell you're managing.
Yeah.
I think you're
managing people out.
Yes, that's what you're doing. You're mismanaging.
Yeah.
On that note,
I think we do. Yeah, we've gone.
Went from drawing our gun and shooting fenders to just
metaphorically shooting, at people in different positions.
Shooting the shit.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Anthony, mate. It's I don't know if you're glad to have me back now, but
well, we may or may not be back next week, people. But whatever.
It is what it is.
These are all our personal opinions. We,
that's why we're here.
Take from it what you will.
Yep.
Okay. Well, as always, we are sponsored by ourselves. You'll find us at privateinvestigator.sydney.com.au. And Danny?
IC Technology for all things managed IT services at ictechnology.com.au.
Stay safe, people. It's a big, dangerous world out there. See you next time.
Peace out.